Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news, and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
There was hope that Gaza could become and develop. There was money for investment for schools, for industry. Gaza was supposed to become this Mediterranean Singapore, and we'd signed an agreement to allow access and trade and commerce and people to go back and forth.
Mr. Reagan, I'm sorry. First of all, you're filibustering, and second of all,
Hamas,
sir, I will point out, and we do
sorry,
have to
but
wrap
Hamas
here.
took over.
We need to point out here, sir, that Israel does control the coastline, the airspace, the egress and ingress into Gaza. Gaza is not Singapore. But I do appreciate you coming on,
But
sir.
only, why though? Joy, be fair, why? When we left, we didn't have those restrictions. We only imposed restrictions because of the violence, because of Hamas, because of the rockets. You can't put the cart before the horse.
The media distortion that Israel is facing and always will face and always has faced. And joining us now is our friend Noah Rothman, associate editor for hotair.com. Hey, Noah.
How you doing?
You know, you wrote a great piece on Madeleine Albright. I did a Gimme Five, a commentary segment on that Madeleine Albright interview where she talked about disproportionality of Israel and the whole nonsense. And, you know, she's a former Secretary of State. You know, Jody Reed is just a MSNBC host. But basically, they're coming from the same place.
Yeah, well, actually, Madeleine Albright was even a little bit more bizarre because her commentary centered on she admitted that Israel has a real, a case to make in the sense that Hamas is not protecting civilians. It's making civilian casualties even more likely. And she admitted that. But in almost the same breath, she then said that the amount of civilian casualties that Israel is responsible for saps it of its moral authority, quote, moral authority, which makes absolutely no sense. Either Hamas is responsible for an excess of human casualties because they're using human civilians, or Israel is killing too many human civilians wantonly, which saps it of its moral authority. Those two things are not congruous. You can't say those two things together and make any sense. And this is the vapidity, which has become really increasingly apparent on the side of those who are attempting to make the case for Hamas. There's just very little case to make, at least from a moral angle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, we've talked about it here today, taking Erin Burnett to school is how I put it. The Israeli ambassador really scolding and educating Erin Burnett about what Hamas does, and when talking about, and endlessly talking about, the possibility that Israel bombed that shelter. And the Israeli ambassador said, you have to point out that A, we told people to leave that shelter in advance, B, Hamas has twice in UN-run schools been found to have been storing rockets. And then what the UN does in those two instances is they take the rockets, they say, here they are, and they give them back to Hamas. He says, you don't tell your viewers that, you're doing them a disservice. And she was speechless. And I went on Twitter immediately and said, oh boy, Erin Burnett just got taken to school. And good, I'm glad she did.
Yeah, I haven't seen any confirmation that it was Israel that was responsible for the attack on the U.S.
No, they have not confirmed that. No.
Yeah, thus far they deny it. But there really is this impulse in the media. They're getting schooled and scolded in a lot of ways by people who are on the left, who are media critics, who suggest that the American media it's far too biased in favor of Israel compared to the rest of the world, where the media culture is far less biased in favor of Israel and much more biased in favor of Hamas. So as a result, I think you're seeing a whole lot of this pushback. And actually, the MSNBC clip you played earlier with Joy Reid, which was absolutely misinformative, willfully misinformative, horrible for somebody who considers herself to be a news broadcaster to misinform her audience in that fashion. But that network was actually subject to a lot of criticism from the left recently because one of their contributors, who is a Palestinian journalist, was on the air and accused that network of being too pro-Israel. And within a couple of days, she was let go as a contributor. And that actually raises a whole lot of questions. I think MSNBC handled that really poorly. They shouldn't have. And the appearance is that she was silenced for her political views, and it's a justifiable thing to suggest. But I don't think that her case is true, that the network is too pro-Israel. But they may be pushing a little bit far in the other direction in order to combat what they see as as maybe a legitimate criticism from people on the left, and that's their bread and butter anyway.
Yeah, and of course CNN reassigned a female reporter who tweeted out something, I forget the exact word she used, about Israelis that got her in trouble, and she was sent to Moscow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I can't remember the word she
there's
used.
a grand tradition of sending people off to Siberia for making politically
I guess
incorrect
that's that's basically the equivalent. All right, you wrote a great piece today. Today's the 25th, asking the question: if Obama put politics ahead of security in Iraq, explain.
Well, there's been a couple of reports coming out of McClatchy recently, which is doing really great work on this, and they're just basically reporting on testimony in Congress, and individuals with the State Department are revealing very critical reports about the nature of the administration's foreknowledge of ISIS and the rise of ISIS in Syria, the extent of the knowledge that the administration officials had before they went on a rampage in Iraq, before the city of Mosul fell, where we're seeing horrific violence. We're seeing crimes against humanity, the destruction of 2,000-year-old Christian and Muslim religious buildings are just being destroyed, very Taliban-esque. And we're understanding that the administration was really fully aware that ISIS was becoming a problem in Syria as early as 2012. They knew when the offensives were going on in Iraq, and they knew about 3 days before the city of Mosul fell that it was going to fall. And they knew that Iraqi security forces could not defend the north and the west of this country appropriately. And they did nothing. They didn't say anything. And as we all remember, in June, late May and early June, when this really exploded, when half of Iraq fell with alacrity that shocked everybody, the administration feigned surprise. They read about it in the news as much as everybody else did. And we're learning that's not the case. And it's actually becoming now, there's that story that is in that post that you quoted is worth reading entirely, because it quotes a lot of individuals who are terrorism experts, who are now saying that this administration, which prided itself on its prosecution of the war on terror in the first administration, is now presiding over the rise of an Islamic caliphate in Syria and Iraq, where terrorist actors with the admitted aim of attacking the United States and the West, in the United States and the West, are actively planning and plotting attacks in a safe haven. And that is going to be their legacy on the war on terror. And you'd think it's something that they would want to combat, but they don't.
They don't, and you look at the Middle East in general as well, Libya in chaos, and what they did to Egypt, and thank goodness, in my view, the Muslim Brotherhood was thrown out of there, and of course, as you mentioned, Iraq and the Caliphate, and it's just, it's almost like there was a game plan. I mean, that's debatable, but as if what we're finding out in your great column in the quotes in McClatchy proves to be absolutely correct, then, and I have no reason to doubt it, then there's a lot of questions that are raised here, and that leads me to the next one. Your story about the Republicans suing Obama. The polls, by the way, Gallup poll out today, just for the record, shows Obama's approval rating rolling average 3-day at 39%. But the public is against impeachment, although I think 35% want him to be impeached. But the public also doesn't favor, a majority does not favor this lawsuit by John Boehner. And that kind of surprises me, which tells me that the Republicans have a long way to go to make their case. It's pretty simple, but they haven't done it well enough through a media that doesn't want them to do it, to educate the public as to why exactly they are suing him.
And that's the critical point we just said there, is they can educate the public. That poll also suggested that the voting populace may be receptive to the message behind this lawsuit, while 57% in the CNN ORC poll said that they don't support this lawsuit, and only 41% did. A plurality, 44%, said that they believe that the administration, and the president in particular, has exceeded his authority and has pushed the presidency beyond its constitutionally limited bounds. And I think it was only 21% disagreed with that. And that's kind of a common sentiment for executives and executive authority. People are really mistrustful of the power of the presidency. But the public is also very mistrustful of Republicans, especially congressional Republicans. They have extraordinarily low approval ratings. And I don't think they trust the GOP in Congress as a vehicle to rein in the president just because it's two evils and one is a slightly worse evil in the minds of the public in general. Now, they could educate the public on this. It would be a titanic effort. It would require a whole lot of focus. Every Republican would have to be out there pounding the gavel every day, going after the administration's abuses of executive authority on a wide range of issues. They have a case to make. But every day they make that case is a day they're not making the case about the crises abroad, about the Affordable Care Act, which is imploding, about the economy, about the crisis on the border, all of these issues which could motivate voters a lot more. I think it's a trap, and I think probably a bad idea for them to focus on the lawsuit over those issues when the stakes are so high.
Noah, have a great weekend, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noah Rothman, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, give me 5, then your Newsmax Now update.